Our topic today is how to create and manage invoices. First, you start with the budget, and this is a job that contains the services you're selling to your client. In addition, you can also add out-of-pocket expenses and make them billable to the client as well. There are two types of services: fixed price services and actuals or hourly price services, how some of you may call them. The difference is obvious. For fixed price services, you'll charge the client a fixed price, no matter how many hours were spent on them, as opposed to actuals, which are charged to the client based on the number of hours you spent working. There is also one key difference which is crucial for our topic here. Fixed price services can be invoiced right away without any track time. For example, you can charge a client upfront, say 50% when you start the job, and then the rest when it's done. Whereas actuals can be invoiced only if you have time tracked against them. How do you actually create an invoice? Well, that's easy. In the budget itself, you will see the amount that needs to be invoiced. And now you can hit New Invoice, which will then get you to the invoice builder. Here, if you want, you can select other budgets that will go on that invoice, including the ones from different projects, providing that they are for the same client. Now I'll hit Next Step, and this is the time to choose how you will structure this invoice, which will affect the amount. In other words, this is the time to choose what you want to invoice. First, you can invoice time and expenses that haven't been invoiced so far. By default, you'll see the total amount here, but you can also choose a specific time frame. So for example, I can choose to invoice all time entries from last week. Needless to say, this method works for services that are defined as actuals. Or you can select the second option, where you can invoice the total uninvoiced amount by each service or by the total budget. Or you can use the third option, where you can invoice a certain percentage of the budget, say 50% upfront. You can also modify line items, so you can display them as a service, or you can add the name of the project perhaps, or the name of the budget, or you can add your own custom text in this field here. If you're using multiple subsidiaries, or perhaps different document templates, you can change them here. Now hit Create a Draft to create a draft invoice. You can use it if perhaps it needs to be approved first, or if there is a different department that will actually send it out to the client. In some agencies, a project manager, for example, can create a draft invoice, but then the accounting team will send it to the client. Now let's look at a structure of the invoice before we finalize it. So the invoice number you have to set up front, and it can be any sequence you'd like. And you can create it in settings. So the sequence that you set up here will then be followed by each consecutive invoice. So for example, if your first invoice starts with the number 1, then the second invoice will start with the number 2, and etc. If you're using purchase order numbers, you should enter them here. The invoice date is important for reporting purposes because it will determine when will the revenue from this invoice be reported. Due date tells your client when this invoice should be paid. Now we're moving to the line items, and here you can reorder them, you can delete them. Once you're happy with the outcome, you can send the invoice to your client. To do that, hit Finalize first to finalize the invoice. Next, you can either download the PDF of the invoice here, or you can send it to your client directly from Productive. You can select the receiver from the list here, or you can add it manually. Now, I would prefer to use this option because it's much faster and you don't have to download the PDF to your computer first. When you're ready, mark the invoice as sent. This will mark the invoice sent to your client. Now, moving on to payments. Obviously, you want to get paid for your work, so hit the Payments tab, and here you can record payments on the invoice. However, if you're using an external accounting tool like, say, Xero or QuickBooks, you can also sync invoices to that tool, and payments will be synced to Productive automatically. For the full list of integrations, search for Productive App Marketplace. Now, sometimes clients can get a bit forgetful and perhaps they miss a payment, and we can help you with that as well. You can set a customized reminder sequence, which will then send emails to your clients just to remind them that there is an outstanding invoice. You can track the reminders on the actual invoice, and when the invoice gets paid, they stop automatically. And this will also apply if you're using an external accounting tool. You can also customize the invoice itself using, say, the logo of your agency, or you want to add additional text or change the name of these fields, or even attach a PDF file, let's say like terms and conditions. For more information on how to do that, go to our help page and search for document templates. Finally, it may happen that you've made a mistake or there is something that needs to be corrected, and to remedy that, you can issue a credit note. So just find the invoice in question, hit here on the options bar and hit create credit note. And that's it.